I remember when I was in my 20s and I was sex obsessed. I watched the movie by Angelina Jolie, Girl Interrupted. And I remember a strange thought passing through my mind. I thought to myself, it would have been really cool to work at a mental health hospital and take sexual advantage of the patients there. I thought to myself, I would just walk into a room and I would say to a given patient, so now it's time for your treatment. Please take your pants down. And I imagine myself sucking off all the mental health patients, all the schizophrenics of a mental hospital with big penises and big testicles. And I thought to myself, wow, what a great job that would be. And so now we have Grindr. You don't even have to work at a mental health hospital, and your fantasies, all kinds of crazy fantasies, can come true. So that was back in my sex-obsessed days. And to give these fantasies reality, we of course have to remove all things human from that experience. So we have to dehumanize other people first. We dehumanize ourselves, and then we can get away with anything. You can take advantage of anybody. You can self-abase yourself sexually. And that's, my friend, the Grindr, the hookup culture today. It's basically a mental ward. And you don't have to work at a hospital to take advantage of mentally ill patients. You can now join Grindr and just start hooking up. So this is the story of Grindr today. It's literally a mental health hospital setting. You go out there and you dehumanize yourself, you dehumanize everybody else, and now whatever you want to do, you can just do it. A famous author, David Hawkins, wrote a book, Power versus Force, and he talks about human consciousness. In the book, he rates human consciousness on a rate of 1,000, which is the God consciousness, to 0, which is shame, guilt, and humiliation. I repeat, at the very bottom, there is shame, guilt, and humiliation. Where do you think Grindr is? Is Grindr at the very top, God consciousness? Or is Grindr at the very bottom, shame, guilt, and humiliation? Of course, it's at the very bottom. So those of you who still think you're going to have love, or you're going to meet friends, or create healthy relationships from Grindr, just remember, you are interacting with people at the very bottom of human consciousness. Shame, guilt, and humiliation. And just like I had fantasies about taking advantage sexually of mentally ill patients, schizophrenic, and whoever else, you probably have the same kind of fantasies. You dehumanize yourself, you dehumanize everybody else, and you're still searching for love and friendships in those environments. It's going to be impossible. Impossible. I understand you may be sexually deprived, emotionally deprived. A lot of people today are emotionally and sexually deprived. But this is especially the time when you have to understand yourself, learn about sexuality, learn about your emotions, reconnect yourself with God, reconnect yourself with your community. Use this time productively. It's very strange times right now to be alive, but it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your values and your principles. Those of you who want to understand sexuality on a deeper level, I'll be opening up a course called Evolution. The link is below this video. You can put your name down, and when the course is open, you'll be the first one to hear about this. It's a 6-week course that helps you understand sexuality in a way that sets you free from all the games that everybody plays with sex, all the devaluation, all the humiliation, all the guilt and shame that's pretty much everywhere in the gay world. The whole gay world is becoming a mental ward. Everybody wants to dehumanize one another and then sexually take advantage of one another. And by doing that, reducing their own self-esteem. The outcome of all of that is what Dr. Ramani calls failure to launch. That's right. The outcome of all of this playing games with sex and with each other is that our lives do not progress forward. She calls it failure to launch. Because you have goals, you have ambition, you want to be happy, And yet sex is becoming this obsession, and you waste so much time, hundreds of hours, looking for sex, looking to hook up in all the wrong places, devaluing yourself, and never really connecting with anybody. So if you're interested in discovering principles and best practices about sexuality, click below this video, put your name down, and when the coaching program starts, you'll be the first one to hear about this. In this video, I want to talk about communication. So even though we started about sexuality in Grindr, I want to share with you a tutorial that's exclusively available for the Big Gay Family Social Program members. I'd like to share this with you. It's about 5 minutes long. It's about communication. Because not only you are devaluing yourself, shaming yourself and others on hookup apps in the entire hookup culture, but also you are regressing in your understanding of communication. I'm going to give you a perfect example of a best practice that's part of the Big Gay Family Social Program. I'd like for you to contrast that to what's happening with Grindr and how you communicate with other men. And you should be blown away to see that the way you communicate is basically shamed and devaluing communication. So I'm going to play for you the tutorial from Big Gay Family Social Program. Enjoy it. And if you'd like to join us, visit the website at biggayfamily.com. And that way you can put an end to all of that humiliation, devaluation, shaming, and guilt, and living your life at the very bottom of human consciousness. So you can put an end to that by joining us at the Big Gay Family Social Program. So enjoy this tutorial, and I'll see you in the program. Hello and welcome to a tutorial about email communication and texting communication for Big Gay Family Social Program. The purpose of this tutorial is to introduce a non-shaming email communication framework that you can also use for texting. I'm going to give you first an example of an email. We're going to break it down into 5 steps, and we're going to describe why these elements are so important. So this is an example of an email that is very simple, that has all the 5 parts in it. Hi, Paul. How are you? Hope you had a great week. I wanted to ask you about the training. I'm having difficulty logging in. Can you help me with my password? Talk to you soon, James. Postscript. I'm glad I joined the program. I'm looking forward to meeting other members. You'll notice that this email has 5 parts. This is the first part. This is the second part. This is the third part. This is the fourth. And this is the fifth. The first one is the greeting. The second one is a friendly tone. The third one is purpose. The fourth one is goodbye. And the fifth one is statement of appreciation. These 5 steps allow the communication to be non-shaming, non-devaluing, and non-minimizing. You'll often see when you communicate with people that they want to get into their purpose immediately. They don't say hello, there's no greeting, there's no friendly tone, there's no goodbye, and there's no statement of appreciation. So why is this 5-step framework so important? It's important because when you come into another person's presence, you don't jump into the purpose of the communication right up front. You don't just walk into somebody's house and say, hey, I want dinner with you. First you say, hey, Paul. Hello, James. Hello, Michael. Then you say, I hope you had a great week. Wow, your place feels great. It feels so nice and warm in here. And then you go into the purpose. I'm looking forward to having dinner with you. What are you cooking? And then once you finish with the interaction, you say goodbye. And then often you can say a statement of appreciation. You can say, it's great to be here to have dinner with you. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to cooking for you next time. So that's what you would do when you meet somebody in person. So the same thing applies to email communication and also texting. The only difference with texting is that when you're texting fast, each time you don't have to state the statement of appreciation or the friendly tone. When it's obvious that you're interacting and you are texting back and forth, you get into the purpose back and forth. But at the very beginning of that texting communication and at the very ending of it, you still want to include the greeting and then goodbye and statement of appreciation. So that's the only difference. But with email, you want to have these 5 parts every time you communicate, especially if there is a break of several hours or a couple days in the communication. Exactly the same way as you would interact with somebody when you walk into their house if you haven't been there over the past couple days. You would still greet them. You would still disclose to them that this is a friendly interaction. You would still state your purpose, and then you would say goodbye and thank them for the interaction. So there's nothing unusual about this communication framework. In fact, this is a loving and kind way to interact with each other. And as you notice when you write to people, you'll notice often that nobody cares to say hello, nobody cares to say goodbye properly, and everybody jumps into the purpose, skipping the most important parts of every communication, which is the greeting, the goodbye, and the statement of appreciation. So this is, my friends, the standard for communication. You greet somebody, you then state that this is a friendly interaction. This helps the other person immediately feel good about the rest of the communication, especially if you have a lot to say. And this dissolves an anxiety or a fear and a rejection or abandonment via email, via communication. Yes, abandonment also can happen via email, not just in person. So we want to include the friendly tone right up front. This is the rapport building part of the email communication so that the other person feels comfortable, so that they immediately know that this is not going to be a confrontation, so that this is not going to be something negative, but instead this is going to be something positive. And then at the end, you include the statement of appreciation so that you leave that communication with a positive statement that appreciates, that lifts the other person. And this, my friends, allows you to connect, allows you to open up to the other person, and shows to them that you care about them. And again, compare this to the communication you see on Grindr, on the hookup apps. It's ridiculously shaming, devaluing, and minimizing to the wholeness of a human being. It's fragmenting most of the time. And so with Big Gay Family Social Program, please practice this 5-step communication frameworks via email and also via texting, and obviously in person when you meet each other in person. You'll notice that often there's resistance to the greeting, there's resistance to the friendly tone, the goodbye, and the statement of appreciation, and that resistance comes from shame that has been internalized, from the feeling of guilt that has been internalized. And so we project it onto others through a violent communication that skips the greeting, the friendliness, the goodbyes, and the statement of appreciation. So now, when you try this out, you will notice that you might have resistance to this. You might actually feel strange about including these 5 steps. And that's how, my friends, you'll have a chance to dissolve the shame and dissolve the guilt about being gay. I know this is a surprising statement to make, but you'll notice, I guarantee you will notice when you write this way, it will feel awkward at the beginning, but the more you write like this, the more you dissolve the internal resistance to your own gayness and to the presence of other gay men in your life. It's going to be very healing and very transformational. I guarantee it. Okay, my friends, so this concludes the tutorial about email and texting communication. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.